this race.
Monster run off turn 2.
Can't get it to the high side. Here he comes. There he goes. Oh, no, Kansas saves, and here they come to the line.
I'm a fortune teller who sees the future, and I see it now.
I'm expecting something with Ferrari this weekend, and he ended up at Hendrick somehow.
Oh, God. No, please. Oh, God. I don't like that thought.
Driving to 5.
I can see the goosebumps that just hit Jacob just now.
Carson.
As we head into our NASCAR segment, we start off with Chris Buescher winning the Cup race at Michigan just a couple weeks ago. Back-to-back Cup wins for him. And just as a little preview for who won this weekend, 17 plus 17 equals 34. So, interesting.
Getting into that numerology.
Well, somebody posted, they're like 17's won the last 2 races. You add the 2 up, it equals 34. The 34 won this week, interestingly enough. But Chris Buescher got the win at Michigan. Did you get a chance to catch the Michigan race, Chris?
I did. I thought it was an okay race. I mean, it seemed like typical Michigan race, but I wasn't bored. I'll say that much about it.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely, I agree with the typical Michigan race, but I've really fallen in love with some of these the cars on the bigger tracks. The Auto Club, the Michigan. I'm sad that Auto Club's not going to be around anymore, but I've fallen more in love with Michigan than I definitely was when I was a kid. I think the only reason I ever looked forward to Michigan when I was a kid because maybe Dale Jr. was going to win, but that was it. Like there was no other reason to look forward to Michigan.
Yeah, that was one track I was always really bored with because no cautions and not much ever really went on at Michigan. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten a nice appreciation for Michigan.
Yeah, definitely. I think it put on a good show. Chris Buescher gets his 4th Cup win of the year. He's gotten
second in a row.
Yeah, second in a row. In 2 weeks, he doubled his win total.
First time in like 12 years or something, RFK has done that. Then Roush Racing.
Yeah, big ups for RFK this year. It looks like, they're maybe going to be able to get Brad Keselowski in on the playoffs with points. So there's a lot of good things happening for RFK this year, and they've been solid. And it's hard to it's definitely, safe to say that program has made solid improvements this season.
Also, I love the Castrol paint scheme.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful paint scheme with the chrome and everything.
Really
Glad they let them bring back the chrome.
It's every car that they sponsor, no matter what sport, whether it's sports car, rally, whatever, it's always a good-looking car.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Castrol does some good paint schemes. I can't deny that.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on, we just wanted to touch on it. So Noah Gragson, one of the favorites of Jacob Barker, guy that I had pegged to make the playoffs, guy that Jacob had made the playoffs, finishing out a rough rookie year by requesting to be released from his contract at Legacy Motor Club. Legacy did grant that release. So Noah Gragson not in the car. Mike Rockenfeller has taken over for the time being, at least for this past weekend and then next weekend. Don't know what's happening after that as far as we know, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to Noah Gragson over the next year. See where he's at next year and what ride he gets. But I expect him in the Xfinity Series, to say the least. So
much for making the playoffs.
Yeah, that certainly didn't happen. I think me and Jacob will have some dues to pay since we picked him, and now we look. This is the worst I've ever looked.
Especially with the rants Jacob went on when this series started about Noah Gragson.
Yeah, we've come a long way, to say the least. It's been a long year, but the saga of Noah Gragson officially over. Moving on from
that we know of.
Yeah, for right now. But moving on with that, a guy who could be joining the Cup Series next year, possible deal for Trackhouse and SVG next year. We've heard some rumors, heard some rumblings. He was back in the 91 car yesterday. Do you believe SVG finds himself a full-time ride next year?
I don't think so next year because he still has I think he still has V8 supercar contract next year, doesn't he?
He might. I'm not sure. I do know that he. I agree with you on at least on the next year part though, because he said before he wants to run a little more ovals, and I think we're going to see him more in the Xfinity and Truck Series before we see him really take off in the Cup Series. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see him really, join in 2025, 26, and who knows? Maybe this is a deal for Trackhouse to maybe they start their own developmental plan in the Xfinity Series. They start their own Xfinity team, or they start their own truck team. Who knows? Maybe that's an opportunity for them.
Specializing in international drivers.
Yeah, that could definitely be something that works for Trackhouse, because they don't have a filler right now and it's not necessarily that they need one. They've got both Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, who I think are both very much so locked into their seats. They don't necessarily need one, but it would certainly help for their future of their brand and their company, what that team wants to do. They want to be successful in the sport. Who are they going to get their drivers from when maybe Ross Chastain's not there, or when Daniel Suarez isn't there? They have to think about the future. This might be an opportunity for them to open up some programs down in the lower series and maybe give some drivers a chance there. And so maybe SVG races for them in 2024, but maybe he's racing in the 99 machine that happens to be in the Xfinity Series. Who knows?
He's going to get a Cup ride eventually. I firmly believe that. I think he'll probably get a part-time Cup ride and the year after next.
115% he will be in the Cup Series at some point. It's just a matter of when. But like I said, I like him racing in the Xfinity Series on a Trackhouse developmental deal. I like that.
You think he'll try the Daytona 500 next year?
No.
You don't think? Do you think he'll try to qualify for it?
Maybe. I think it depends on his own confidence level. Like if I was somebody coming into the sport, had never ran on any sort of super speedway, I would be like, okay, can you give me like spring Talladega? Because like out of the 4, we're not counting Atlanta in this, but out of the 4, super speedway races, like spring Talladega is probably the most forgettable, because like there's the Daytona 500, and there's the one race before the playoffs, and then you have the one playoff race. At least in the spring Talladega race, if I suck or I screw something up or I wreck the field, I have the least amount of a chance to wreck somebody's season in that sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, you put me in the Daytona 500, somebody's going to be pissed if I wreck it. Somebody, I just took them out of the Daytona 500. You put me in the fall Daytona race, somebody's going to be pissed because I just took them out of a playoff spot. You put me in the Talladega race, somebody's going to be pissed because I just took them out of a final 8 spot. So the only race that you can hop in, I wouldn't do it. If I was him, I'd start at Talladega. Give me spring Talladega and then see where you're at. And then it's like, okay, now I'm comfortable. Let's do some more. But that's where I would be. I think it's Daytona 500 first start. There's been guys that have done it, but it's scary. And like, even in those scenarios where it's like any guy can walk in and basically win a race at Daytona, it's not necessarily, because there's certain things that are different about it. I mean, IndyCar drivers, F1 drivers, they're not used to running 3x3 like it's, I-80. Like, they're not used to that. So it takes some adjusting.
And it takes a lot of courage, too, that a lot of drivers might not have, which is not a bad thing, because you have to be a little crazy.
Yeah. SVG was probably, I think he said it, he was 3 times, he was 3 wide more times on Saturday or Friday at IRP than he was ever in his racing career. Like, it's a completely different style of racing than he's ever had. Throw him at Talladega first, give him an opportunity there before because like, I don't want everybody to hate him if he accidentally makes a mistake, because I wouldn't blame him if he made a mistake never running restrictor plate races before at Daytona, because I would do the same thing. So I can't blame him. But everybody, like NASCAR Twitter, would explode if he wrecked the field. You know what I'm saying?
And NASCAR Facebook would be worse, because all the old people there would be complaining about that darn foreigner.
Yeah. So it would definitely be difficult, to say the least. But hey, maybe SVG joins Trackhouse in the coming years. We'll have to see. Obviously, I just mentioned it, but the Truck Series raced at Indianapolis Raceway Park this past weekend, making their return. Ty Majeski was able to win the truck race and advance into the next round of the playoffs. Top 20 finish for SVG in his first ever Truck Series event. So congratulations to him. We'll have to see if he continues to improve and get some more one-off events. Did you happen to catch the SVG debut in the Truck Series?
I did not, but I did hear a lot of impressive things about SVG, and I'd have to say he's probably one of the most impressive international drivers out there.
Absolutely. And I think the big thing is he had a lot of fun doing it on Friday. That was one of the big things he talked about. He was having a lot of fun, had a great time being in the race, and it was some of the coolest stuff he's gotten to experience. And that's straight out of his mouth. So I firmly believe he's going to be around for a while. He could be a threat or a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, Ty Majeski wins the truck race at IRP. Moving on over to the Xfinity race, we saw Ty Gibbs winning the Xfinity race at Indianapolis.
Kill people.
Yeah, then he followed it up with a burnout that, just right in the middle of the racetrack while everybody's still racing. So not a cool move, Mr. Gibbs, but that is fine. Congratulations to him on the win. He had
In all seriousness, I think he should be fined for that.
Oh, yeah. 100%. $50,000. Are you kidding me?
Because that, for one thing, I thought that was bad sportsmanship. For another thing, he could have. A lot of drivers aren't expecting it after you cross the checkered flag, after you cross finish line. You're not expecting it. You're loosening your belts, maybe have your visor up, not expecting to hit anything or anybody.
Well, I'm pretty sure some of them, I think were they all in the cool down lap when that happened? I think some of them were still racing back to the line.
Well, they might have been.
I think there were some that were still trying to finish. I think there were some that were on a cool down lap, but there were some that looked like they were still trying to finish. Like, it was almost like maybe he didn't take his cool down lap. And I don't know. It's a weird thing. I just don't do what Ty Gibbs did, please.
Yeah, that wasn't cool.
Please don't do that. But moving on to the Cup race at Indianapolis, obviously another race on the road course, something I'm not too fond of. We talked about it before, but Michael McDowell getting the win. Like I said, 17 plus 17. Back-to-back wins for Chris Buescher equals 34. Michael McDowell gets the win, an underdog win, his second career win over at Indianapolis. If you would have told a NASCAR fan back in 2008 that guy flipping to 00 at Texas was going to be a two-time winner, one of them at Indy and one of them at Daytona, they'd probably call you crazy. But here he is now, Michael McDowell, two-time winner in the Cup Series, two of the biggest races. You could call him the modern-day Jamie McMurray at this point. Chris, what are your thoughts on Michael McDowell winning at the Brickyard?
He's such a likable guy. He really is. And I'm glad that he won. I didn't realize it was his second career win. I knew he won the Daytona 500, but I thought he was up there. I thought he won a couple of other races, but I knew he's been having some good runs lately, and it shows you he's got some talent.
Absolutely. And I'll say that it was something that was pointed out. He didn't have his family at the Daytona 500 when he won the 500 because COVID was still going on. So he had his family there at Indianapolis, this past weekend, and having that playoff pressure, he needs a win to get in or needs, some good points and stuff like that. You put your family in there. All those factors probably gave him a few tenths, and those were the tenths that were enough for him to beat Chase Elliott on Sunday.
Yeah, and I was also rooting a little bit for Chase Elliott, too.
I was, too. I ain't going to lie.
But I do like Michael McDowell because he is such a likable guy, and a lot of people said he didn't win Daytona 500 on merit. But that's how a lot of drivers win. The front wrecks, and then third or fourth place car wins.
You don't have to like it. It's just that's the way it goes. I don't like that. That's how Joey Logano won the 2015 Daytona 500, but that's how it works. I mean, is that not how Dale Earnhardt won the Daytona 500?
And that's one of the most legendary races of all time.
And it ended under caution. Mike Joy literally says it. And Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution and checkered flag to win the Daytona 500. Like it's always been in the sport.
So them kind of.
There's no reason to discredit.
Yeah, and to Michael McDowell, he has strong finishes too.
Mm-hmm. FRM has improved tremendously over the last few years, and I mean, credit to them for finally deciding that they're going to stick with him in the car, and then they're also going to stick with Gilliland in the car. Todd
Small
Gilliland.
team too.
Small team. They've been making small improvements just over the years, but I think having Michael McDowell in that car, he's been there a few years. It's continuing to help them. He's more of a veteran these days, been in the sport a long time. He's helped improve that team tremendously, and it's nice of them to be able to recognize that by re-signing both their drivers this past week. And obviously, I'm happy that they're giving Gilliland his full-time ride back because he should have never lost it in the first place. Glad they cleaned up their mess there.
Yeah, that too. And are they completely independent?
No, I think that they actually work with RFK.
Well, they're almost independent at least. At the very least, they give the illusion that they're independent.
Yeah, I do think they have small little alliances, but they're probably one of the more independent teams. That's like they're probably one of the more independent 2-car teams. Like obviously you have 23XI, who's really really involved with like Joe Gibbs and everything like that. So like they're one of the less involved teams. So I would agree with that.
And that makes it even more impressive too.
Yeah.
Watch him win the championship.
Oh, what a world that would be! But he would at that point he'd deserve it. He'd have worked his butt off to get there. They don't have a ton of playoff points right now. I think maybe he's got 6-7 playoff points. So it's going to be an upward battle to get there for sure. But I mean, he flat out dominated yesterday. The Cup race only had one caution yesterday. One caution. The entire race yesterday. It was on lap 3. They resumed on lap 6. It was a 77 lap green flag run to the finish yesterday. And the first time we've had a 1 caution race since 2013 or since 2012, I'm sorry, at Auto Club in a rain shortened race, mind you. And that caution that came out was for the rain that ended the race. So we haven't seen a race like that in a long time. Obviously not having stage breaks, stage cautions in there definitely had an effect on that. I think it was we had the longest green flag run since literally before the stage era. Like, we don't get long green flag runs like we did yesterday. It even helped the run time of the race. The race didn't run long. It didn't run for 4 hours like NASCAR races do on a Sunday. 2.5 hours that race was done.
I think they had to fill up like 2 hours or something.
I think they probably thought it was really nice because for once they were able to get in a full post-race show without being like, all right, we're going to move you over to Peacock. Like there was no reason to move over to Peacock because they had to air for another hour after, like we got like an hour-long post-race show. It was nice. So it was good to see. Did you enjoy the long green flag run? I know some people didn't. Were you okay with it?
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with it. I mean, like I was saying about Michigan, I wasn't bored.
Yeah.
I wasn't bored at all. It just seemed like a typical traditional race, which there's nothing wrong with.
Mm-hmm. It's just a nice traditional race. I mean, it was nice to just see how everything played out. And in the end, is it not crazy that 90 laps go by and still there's guys within a second of each other still fighting for the win? I mean, I'll give them this, right? Like, this was one of those, like, this race went on 77 green flag laps, and somehow the margin of victory was like under a second. I want to say it was like 9/10 or something like that. Like,
it didn't
that's
feel
good.
So artificial, like the stages make it feel.
Mm-hmm. It felt very natural. That was just how the race played out, and I think that it's something to keep in mind for when wanting to get rid of stage cautions, because like part of the whole thing is cautions at the end of the race. Stage cautions, they help add for some of these other, backmarker teams to have opportunities. It was clear in day yesterday that none of that was necessary for FRM to get the right opportunity to win. So they kind of proved like, hey, you don't have to have stage breaks and you don't have to have a late race caution for an underdog to have an opportunity to win. And I think that's why it felt so much more special. It was like watching an underdog win in 2005. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And two, one thing that kind of made me laugh a little bit was how the drivers were kind of complaining that they didn't have a break. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, yeah, I know it's hot in the car. Yeah, things are different, but it wasn't that long ago when there were before stages and guys didn't have a lot of breaks.
No, that's fair, and I think every driver's different. You know, there was a report that Michael McDowell, he prefers the longer runs because he's able to stay into a rhythm. And I can understand that because you get into a rhythm and you don't want to lose it, and then you lose it and it takes you 5 laps to pick it back up again. But at the same time, I'm in that crowd of like, I definitely know, like, even just for myself, like being on like a sim racing rig, right? Like there are times where like I am tense because like I'm working hard and like I'm tense, I'm gripping the wheel and everything, and I have to relax myself. And so some of those guys, that might be the only time they relax themselves. Like they don't talk to themselves enough. They always feel like they're on edge, and that might be why they feel that way. So I can slightly understand it, but at the same time, like that's part of the sport is the attrition and the tough physical aspect of it is getting through that sort of thing, and that's part of the sport. So
You with it.
yeah, you got to deal with it. You got that's the way it is. There's nothing we can do to change it. It's the way it is. So
I was actually, I guess it's been about 2 years ago now. I have a cousin who was on the pit crew he was in Michael Waltrip Racing, and he was pit crew of in Richard Petty's old team before they sold it to Jimmy Johnson. And he's retired now. And I asked him about stages and what drivers thought of it. And he said it was about half and half. Some drivers really like it, and some drivers absolutely hate it.
mm-hmm.
And I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it provides a break. It's good for TV and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I've been part of the crowd that just get rid of the cautions and just let the race play out like it's always has the way NASCAR works. There's no cautions, all natural cautions. We get enough of them these days that it can work. But
And we don't even need natural cautions, as stated the other day or yesterday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I do love I've never been against the idea of handing out points mid-race, like with the stages. I've said before, I do think it helps with competitiveness mid-race. And honestly, when it comes to ovals, I would love to see how taking away stage cautions changes things, because then, you get a really, really long green flag run. There's going to be a lot of different strategy, a lot of guys trying to just nab a few points. And then, I would love to see what it would look like on an oval race with the, subtraction of stage cautions.
Or yeah, it kind of reminds me of like without stage cautions, giving out points mid-race. I hate it. I hate stages, but at the same time, for me, it makes it palatable. And it kind of reminds me of back when they used to give 5 bonus points for most laps led and 5 bonus points for leading a lap.
Yeah, no, that's entirely fair. And just to put it into perspective, what I've been doing, I told you I've been playing NASCAR Heat 5, the mod on the PC, the 2023 mod. So shout out to the developers for that. But I've been playing that. And when I do it, I'm doing my point system just like a normal Winston Cup points format, but I've left in the stages. The leaving in the stages has changed the way the championship goes dramatically. I lost one of my truck championships simply because I had like 40 less points, like stage points, than Chandler Smith. He was just like, I had some better finishes than him, but he was consistently running up front. Like if he finished top 5, he ran top 5 the whole race. Versus if I finished top 5, I started 20th and had to work my way up. So that changes things. So like that's where like that dynamic, the way the championship would run, honestly, now that I think about it, that would piss more people off. There'd be more people like, what if stage caution or stages didn't exist? This person would be winning the championship. Like this whole thing, it'll never be perfect. What are we doing?
That's me. I always run with Winston Cup point system in NASCAR Heat.
Well, and part of why I do it is because if you do it on anything less than like a 36 race season, it gets like extremely broken. Like it doesn't, like, I can't remember what it was. I think I did like a 36 race season on the championship mode, and it broke when I got to the playoffs because it prioritized, like, there were guys that should have been in that weren't in. Like the guys like like 25th had a win, didn't get put in the playoffs. It was weird. And so I wasn't very happy about it, but that's why I like to do the Winston Cup points format because it doesn't break the game.
That's another problem. You know, that's a good segue into my rant about NASCAR heat.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, it's a mess. And it's an unexcusable mess. It is unacceptable of what happened. Pretty much, in case you don't know, before I go on this rant, do not buy NASCAR Heat 5. And if Motorsports is listening to me and they don't want to sponsor this or whatever, they don't want to give us a game, well, too bad. Because I wouldn't want to play your game that's so broken right now anyway. But anyways, with the next gen update, I didn't buy the DLC or anything because I don't want to. But after the update, none of my DLC worked. I got all the other DLC, all the paint schemes, everything like that. They all don't work anymore. And I actually, the only reason why I can play it, only reason why my DLC work now is because I met a guy on Steam and he just happened to back up the old version prior to the update. So I can semi-mod the game, kind of, not really, to where it doesn't update and I can play the DLC, and that's how I have to play, which that's just completely unacceptable. And there are people that paid a lot of money for those DLC. I admit I didn't pay a lot of money for the whole game. I only paid like $3 for it, so I'm not as bad as I could have been. But like I said, that's unacceptable. You need to fix the game.
Well, and I can attest to that very thing because in order to play the 2023 mod, I did have to revert back to an older version to get it to run because it doesn't work anymore. And as somebody who was on Xbox and like I did buy it on the PC for the sole reason of it destroyed my game on the Xbox. Nothing works anymore. Nothing runs anymore. Even when it was working, you couldn't change the settings on any of the races. Like everything would crash. And so it just completely destroyed my game. I uninstalled it and I will keep on the 2023 mod of NASCAR Heat 5 and until something exponential changes. I'm hoping that at least we've heard rumors that NASCAR does have a substantial announcement about racing games in the future. Whether or not that's with MSG or not, we'll see. I'm hoping we do get that iRacing port over to Xbox or PlayStation. I think it would help the iRacing fan base a ton, and I think it would be very successful. Bring it over. If they bring iRacing over to Xbox, I'll never stop.
That's fair. But my biggest thing is, I hope the announcement is that they'll fix the game.
No, I'd rather them just I'd rather motorsport games never touch anything ever again. Them fixing the game will only break it more.
Yeah.
They said they released
a
a patch.
point.
It didn't make it much better. All it did was make it so I could join into a race, but now I can't change settings or anything, and I can no longer load my old season, and I haven't even figured out yet because my main concern was I think it wiped my stats. I had like 1,000 races on my NASCAR Heat 5 account on the Xbox. Like it was like maybe not 1,000. I think it was like 600. I had like 100 and something win. Like it was a lot of races on there. That's just all my stats are gone. I can never see them again. And it's like, why? I don't know if they're there because I tried looking back on it, but you know why I don't know if they're there? Because the game crashes when you open it. See, now I'm all riled up. The game sucks.
They made a good game, a fun game. NASCAR Heat, for what it was fun.
It was a great game. I enjoyed it. I loved it. They destroyed it. They took it and ran it through a shredder and then gave it back to me and said, enjoy.
And a lot of people gave a lot 704 games treble. And that's who developed it, right? 704.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they quite deserved that. Because now look what we have. This train wreck.
Yeah. It's an absolute mess with the NASCAR gaming scene right now. Definitely
And
not good.
I hope there's a lawsuit coming soon. Because, like I said, that's unacceptable. That content that you paid for isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And on the Steam page, you can still buy that content. So, Steam, at the very least, needs to do something about that.
Yeah. You're buying content that doesn't work. It's kind of illegal. I feel like I don't know the logistics of it. So maybe it's not illegal, but either way, it's stupid. And I just can't believe that a fan base would be treated like that in the first place. But we are where we are.
Look like angels.
Exactly. People have asked for EA to come back, which is
That's
saying a lot.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
And Bethesda looked like angels
Mm-hmm.
after their whole paid mod fiasco
Yeah.
on Fallout.
They actually have a new game coming out in a couple weeks, Starfield.
I still don't know a whole lot about Starfield. That's a problem with it. Anyways, we're going way off the rails with Starfield.
Heading back over to our normal topics, if we will. We did see tire testing today and tomorrow at the Indy Oval. Chris, does the Indy Oval return?
I reckon so. I did see where they're selling tickets. They didn't say it, but they said something like "back to the Brickyard" on the poster or something like that.
I think it said "back to glory," something like. I know what you're talking about. I saw the poster that you're talking about. So that we've definitely, had things lean towards it. I think the fact that it hasn't been announced which track it's on, maybe they don't even know yet. Maybe they don't even know what's happening with the whole weekend yet.
I mean, I love road course races. I think there should be more road course races. If I had my way, I would have only some tracks only have one race a year and replace them with road course races. I know people don't, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but they need to, it's a crown jewel race, the Brickyard 400. They need to bring back. And going back to Michael McDowell, too, he really knows how to win the big races.
Yeah, no, I called him the modern day Jamie McMurray, if you will. But one of the things that I agree with you on I love having the road courses, but I've said before, the Indianapolis road course should not be on the NASCAR schedule after this year. The oval will hopefully replace the road course, and that helps bring back tradition. But that then opens up a road course race slot, right? So then you drop Richmond, then to allow a six. Okay, I am freaking. I'm going over. Yeah, you add in Wilkesboro, right? And then you can add in another road course race. And I've been on the fence of I want us to go back to Road America, but I also said, and I'm looking, this is what I'm looking off of when I'm talking about some of this, is one of my most recent articles about NASCAR and street courses. I'm not against the idea of dropping the Indy road course race, giving that race the oval. So now we have an extra road course race slot. You drop Richmond. So now that becomes a road course race slot. Richmond loses one day because it's better with just one day. And then you can give it another, you can do a rotating street course or something like that. Or just go back to Road America. Or what I think they'll end up doing is they go to Montreal, which I'm all for. Take us to Montreal. Do it.
I don't have anything against that.
I don't either. And it's been rumored, and it's very possible that we see the Cup Series run Montreal next year, and I am all for it.
And again, that's a good way to get some more international drivers because it's a grade 1, grade A, grade whatever, FIA track.
Yeah.
Which means F1 can race on that track. That's basically in its state of the art. Yeah. That's pretty much what it means. And that attracts drivers. That attracts international talent, which I always like seeing international talent.
We've seen how COTA has attracted international talent. I would imagine that Montreal does something very similar.
And I always think it's very interesting getting an F1 track, a state-of-the-art F1 track on the calendar. And that's why I always thought COTA was very interesting. because if you really think about it, it's a huge track with how wide it is, and just it's actually a pretty long track too. What are the lap times like? 1:50 or 2:15 or something?
Yeah, like 2:01, I want to say.
So that makes it even more unique. And
Yeah.
but as much as I love road courses, I would rather see a slot open up for Wilkesboro.
No, that's a fair point. I think we could definitely see another track even lose a date. But from what I understand about next year's schedule, the info that I've gathered, if Montreal was to make the schedule, it would be expected in May, which would kind of replace the Sonoma race that normally sits in May, and that they would move Sonoma up into the West Coast swing in March. So we would get green Sonoma, which I've always said we should be putting Sonoma in March because it's beautiful there. It's green. I'm glad that it's not confirmed, but the rumors have swirled that Sonoma would be like the third or fourth race of the year. It'd be included in the West Coast swing, so it'd be Phoenix, Sonoma, and Vegas rather than Auto Club, and that'll be the Auto Club's 1 year replacement. And then obviously like Montreal will be added to the schedule, and then maybe they drop the Indy Road Course race, and then they don't need to drop Richmond because Auto Club is already gone for the year. So there's a lot. The schedule is still about a full month out from what Bob Pockris said over the weekend. We're still a good 3 to 4 weeks away from really knowing what this schedule is going to look like, but we have our theories and we know what we want. Do you think
Wilkes will be in it?
Maybe. I think it could. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a regular season race at all. But one way or another, I'll say this. One way or another, it's on the schedule. It's just whether or not it's actually a points-paying race. I think it's a good chance that it's a points-paying race. But if not, I'm not ruling it out ever. Like it'll happen eventually. It just might not be this year. They might want to run the All-Star race there again this year because maybe they think if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I guess NASCAR's never really thought that way. So yeah, Wilkesboro will be on the.
NASCAR just doesn't make sense in general. Now,
so that's the opposite of their motto. If it's broke or if it's not broke, fix it. Like that's their motto.
That's what they did with stages.
That's what they did with stages. What they did
and
with
the playoffs,
everything.
And two, I think it's inevitable that a Rockingham will come back. Not next year, but the year after next.
We have heard a lot of rumblings about Rockingham coming back. I wouldn't be surprised if it does become the All-Star race in replacement for North Wilkesboro. And one thing that I want to give Eric A-Step credit, because he was the one that actually came up with this idea, but I'm not against the idea of drop a Darlington race date. Lose the spring Darlington race, give the throwback race to North Wilkesboro. It gives the throwback race life once again. North Wilkesboro gets a
literally where it started.
Mm-hmm. It puts Darlington back to one date, so even more people show up for the Southern 500. That's already a very populated race. So I think that is probably the decision they would go with if they were to add it back on the schedule. And I don't think Darlington with one race is frowned upon because keep in mind it had one race for a long time.
But at the same time, like we say, NASCAR, it makes sense, and NASCAR doesn't do things that make sense.
Yeah, they're not known for doing things that make a ton of sense, so it would hard to see this move get done, to say the least.
And I think Dale Jr. needs to be the president of NASCAR, because when he talks on his podcast, he makes sense, usually.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I agree with that.
And he was talking about, I think we talked about this another episode a while back, but he was talking about how he doesn't believe that the championship race should only be one race.
I've always agreed with the championship race not being one race. I've always said make the championship like 3 races. You can make it a whole round, and then you have and it's not like you add in, like you're not adding in an odd number of championship races, then you have 12 playoff races. So then you're sitting at a third of your season is the playoffs, which isn't like it is what it is, but at the same time, 3 races per round is the mold. And then I think when that happens, right, like I think it works better that way. I really do. I think it works better as 3 races. I don't know why they haven't moved in that direction yet, but they need to do it soon.
I mean, I wouldn't even be mad if they went back to the chase format.
I've said the same thing. I wouldn't be mad if they wrapped up and decided, you know what, we're done with the playoffs. Let's go back to the chase. Chase is better. Chase is. I liked the chase. I did.
It's a good kind of medium ground, a good compromise between the whole playoffs thing that they want to do, which I still don't quite understand, and the old Winston Cup format.
I like the chase, and I like the format where it was 10 races, and then you had 10 drivers, and then you had the 2 wild card drivers who got in based on wins. They specifically created that spot for guys like Jamie McMurray. Like that spot would be the Michael McDowell spot. You know what I mean? Like that spot literally was created for the sole purpose of Jamie McMurray won the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard, and he won Pocono all in the same year, and then was not in the chase. And they're like, we can't have that happen again. So they made that provisional where like a guy with the highest wins, not in the top 10, gets the chase spot.
I mean, yeah, there were
like what happened?
Had issues, but it didn't have anywhere near as big of issues as what's going on now. That mess. Let me tell you,
it'd be easy if NASCAR would just say, that's just the way it is. That sucks that you lost. But we're not going to change the format just because you got screwed. Like that's their thing. Every time somebody would get screwed, they're like, oh, change the format. Oh, Jeff Gordon, playoff spot. Like, what? Like
what they did with Matt Kenseth.
They just never at any point like put their foot down. And we're like, no, that's not how it works. Actually, there was one point, and it was what killed MWR. Spingate was the only point.
And, you know, something else happened to me going back to that kind of NASCAR Heat 5. I was playing with an old version that I was doing career mode, and I was in the truck series, and I won something crazy like 8 races, including the playoffs. And that championship shouldn't even been close. And I lost. And that's bad. The fact that can happen is just very bad.
It's unfortunately where our sport is. But
and like a guy that wins something crazy like 8 races, he deserves to win the championship mid-season. I don't care how many races it is. I don't care if it's kind of a Max Verstappen sort of thing. He deserves to win the championship mid-season, just like Max Verstappen does.
No, that's fair. I mean, because in NASCAR, you could have a guy that's like Max Verstappen, wins every race, but then he doesn't win Abu Dhabi, and that's it.
Which, that's not right.
No, that's entirely fair. But before we get too heated, we'll go ahead and slowly go ahead and point our toes over towards next week's show, where Watkins Glen will be our topic. Who is your pick?
Watkins Glen.
Who's your pick this weekend?
Huh.
I'll tell you right now, my pick's Chase Elliott.
You think?
I do. Place he got his first win. Needs one really bad. Was solid but close last week. They'll close the deal next week.
I'm thinking maybe.
And to add on, what'll make it even greater, it's going to feel a lot like his first win because it's going to be him versus MTJ to the finish.
I think he'll be in the top 5, no doubt. But I think it'll be are there going to be any what they call road course ringers?
I don't know who's on the. I'm not sure who's on the schedule for road course ringers this weekend. I'd have to take a look, but I'm sure there's going to be a couple.
Back, is he?
I don't think he is. Let's take a look. The Watkins Glen entry list right here. Taking a look at it, Mike Rockefeller will be in there. Andy Lowley's going to be in a car. Yeah, Andy Lally will be in the 15. As far as road course ringers, I mean, obviously AJ Allmendinger, who's there every single week, but like it doesn't look like we've got any. No, we've got a 36. According to the entry list via NASCAR.com, there are 36 drivers that are entering in the race this weekend, and none of them are road course ringers except for the Andy Lally, who doesn't race every week. He would be the only one that is coming in with Mike Rockefeller. Other than that, that's it.
Huh. I'm thinking I'm torn between Michael McDowell again, pulling 2 in a row, and say I had somebody in mind, but I just completely forgot him. But it was AJ Allmendinger. I think it'll be between Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, and Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I could see that. I think Allmendinger will be up there. He had some struggles yesterday, but maybe they get him cleaned up for next week. I think one guy that we didn't mention it, maybe Jacob would have if unfortunately his power was working, but Daniel Suarez on.
Yeah, I was thinking Daniel Suarez too.
If you look at last lap or if you look at median lap times from the final 25 laps or something like that from yesterday, Suarez was actually the fastest car. They just had the mistake on pit road that unfortunately was the reason that he wasn't even involved. So maybe the 99 team puts together a clean race and he finds himself out front once again. Definitely don't want to rule him out. I didn't want to forget him because I didn't want to feel stupid if Daniel Suarez wins. He's a guy I'm still keeping my eye on as well. But I'm safely choosing Chase Elliott. But I would also take Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, I was thinking Daniel Suarez too. I was thinking I just wasn't feeling it. I'm feeling Michael McDowell.
Okay. Michael McDowell back to back. We see 2 back-to-back winners back to back. We see Chris Buescher winning 2 races in a row, followed by Michael McDowell. That is the Christopher Shoemaker prediction.
Wouldn't that be a feel-good win though?
Oh, absolutely.
Michael McDowell,
absolutely.
2 races in a row.
Plus, I'm pretty sure he's been involved in quite a big wreck, one of those big wrecks back in the early 2010s at Watkins Glen when it felt like
I think I know the one you're talking about. That was David Rudiman.
Yeah, it was Rudiman, actually. Yeah, it was Rudiman and Reagan. But, we used to get one every year at Watkins Glen. Thank God I don't feel like we have to deal with that anymore.
Watkins Glen they say it's kind of like a short track on a road course, which, yeah, I can see it. The short layout is a lot like that.
Mm-hmm. We just haven't seen a lot of those stack-ups in the last few years. We saw them a lot way back then, but it's been a long time, I feel like, since we've seen a big stack-up over at Watkins Glen like that. So who knows? Maybe this weekend is the weekend. But, obviously we've got Watkins Glen coming up this Sunday. That's going to be the only race for us to pretty much tune into. Obviously, SRX will be going on this weekend as well, so make sure you tune in.
Forget to watch SRX.
So do I. I get busy on Thursday nights, and it's hard to give it a watch. But we'll have some good road course action from the Watkins Glen, New York next week. It'll be quite exciting, so make sure you guys are tuning in for that. And that pretty much wraps things up here for this week's show. So we thank you guys for tuning in. Chris, you want to go ahead and plug yourself? Say what you want to say.
You should follow me on Twitter. I changed my name. I'm now CJ_the line.
Hey.
And because, got to keep with the times with the rebrand. And also follow me on the Back Sports page. I'm Christopher Shoemaker, my name. And I actually have an article that just went up today, and I probably will have one that'll go up, if not tomorrow, at least sometime in the next 3 days. And it's some good hockey content. If you're curious about a British hockey player, check them out. And Florida Panthers fans, check out the next article too.
Heck yeah, folks. Make sure you guys are checking out all of our articles over on Back Sports page. I know Jacob's had some work this week. Chris has had some work. I have released a couple things this week as well, specifically related to the NFL. But for my esports fans and for my NASCAR fans, some more stuff will be coming out later in the week as well. And also want to give a shout out to Paulina, who's featured on the show many, many times. She writes for soccer alongside.
We need to have her on again.
Yeah, we'll have to bring her back. But she writes for soccer, so always check out her articles as well. But we've been popping over on the Back Sports page, so make sure you guys are checking us out over there. Make sure you guys are reading up on those articles.
We need to plug the new girl.
Yeah, Nicole, I'll have to get her information, and we can set her up, and we'll give her a plug. But we do have
be on the show too.
We do have a new writer with Back Sports page. Hopefully, we can get her on at some point and have her on the show. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, my @ is Mace Hollywood. That is also going to have a link to my link tree, which will take you to all of my other socials as well as Instagram. And you can also get into my articles that way as well. So we thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Coming to the Line. Chris, do you have any final thoughts before we officially cross the line and end the show?
Zebras are kind of like referees.
They are. They're exactly like referees, and that's why they call like that. That's why referees are called zebras. They call them the zebra.
You know, do you think German shepherds bark in a German accent? Do you think other dogs see police dogs as scary because they're afraid they're going to give them a ticket?
Hey, that's a good question. I'm going to leave that question for our viewers to decide. Let them think on that. Folks, think about what Chris just said. Chris, repeat your question one more time.
Do you think that German shepherds bark with a German accent? And do you think that police dogs, other dogs are afraid of police dogs because they're afraid they're going to give them a ticket? Are they the law enforcement of the dog world?
Keep that in mind, folks, throughout your week.
Vitamins.
Keep that in your brain throughout the week. And we'll ask Jacob about it next week. We'll ask what he thinks. But once again, we thank you for watching Come Into the Line. And yeah, don't forget.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this most recent edition of the Outside Line podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to check us out on Spotify at The Outside Line. And if you liked Christopher, Jacob, and I's opinions, make sure to check us out on Back Sports page for more articles and opinions about F1, NASCAR, and IndyCar. Thank you again for watching The Outside Line.